Hello and welcome at Book Lovers Companion. My name is Edith, and right next to me, no chattering teacup, no CEO. The teacup is busy again, right, dear listeners, doing dear things. Our dear CEO is either probably roaming the estate or taking another horizontal life pause. So in essence, he's doing what he does best. But here with me is young adult fiction author Rodnay DD. Rodnay, hello and welcome at Book Lovers Companion.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show, and let's dive right into your books because there are two of them already. The first one, correct me if I'm wrong, of course, is Dreams Academy, which was published in April 2023. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. And book number 2, Dear Dumb Diary of a Teenage Girl, was published in January 2024.
Yes.
Yeah, good. And you are what we call an indie author, are you not?
Correct.
Oh, good. So tell us a little bit about your books.
So the first one I published was when I was about 15, and I don't know where I really got the idea from, but I really liked it.
Yeah, good.
And I guess it was just like, I was just like writing down a bunch of ideas. I wouldn't say it was my best one because it wasn't a lot of editing, but I tried. So.
And what is book number 1 about? It's called Dreams Academy. What? Tell us a little bit about the plot and your main character in this book.
So it's about Sophia, another one, but it's about her, and she basically, her and her friends, they go into this portal, and
Oh, don't worry. As far as I can tell, it's also about she discovers this inside her grandmother's bookshop. Am I right?
Yes, it's about a book, and it transports her to this fictional place in her dreams, and there's like a lot of fantasy stuff going on, and she's like on a mission to find her lost father.
And I get it. It's not just her, but there are also other young adults or teenagers with her.
Yes, those are her friends, and they're like mostly there to help her out and everything. And she experiences a lot of grief in the novel, and there's a lot to it. But it's mainly about magic and spells and all that stuff. It's like a magic school, so it's kind of similar to Harry Potter, but not very.
And what about book number 2, the most recent one? I get it. It's more like one might compare it to the Adrian Mole diaries, but with a female protagonist and a different generation.
Yes, it's a contemporary, if I'm saying that right. And it's about a 14-year-old girl who's just starting out her freshman year in high school. It's like a typical high school experience where there's rumors and toxic friends, but in particular, it's based off so many different dynamics and perspectives of teenage life, like the struggles, the intense emotions, and just things that make being a teenage girl hard.
And you said it's about different dynamics. It's always interesting to read such books, especially for people who live outside the United States and have experienced a different school life. Let's call it that. What would you say are the most important issues for her as a teenager?
It's mostly, I'd say, her self-image and how others perceive her. I feel like she's like insecure in a lot of areas, and she tries to mold herself into someone she's not to fit in with other people.
And how much influence these days do social media have in fitting a mold? A lot. Well, just like, I don't know, Instagram, TikTok, and all the other platforms. I suppose they do not help with your self-image as a teenager these days.
Definitely.
See, that's why I'm glad that I grew up when these things didn't exist at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were the lucky ones. Generation X. So I suppose Generation Z or C, as those are called also in your book, they weren't so lucky, were they?
No, not at all.
And are you also someone who is glued to her mobile phone or cell phone?
Most times, yes.
Well, that's at least honest. And what is it? What is it about those platforms that keep you glued to them? What is it particularly? Because for someone my generation, dear God, that sounds old. Anywho, I mean, you scroll through usually through a few pictures or cat videos. That's what the older generation does usually. What is so fascinating for the younger generation about these platforms?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I feel like it's because we have a lot of time on our hands, so we're just like scrolling like so much.
Yeah, too much time on your hands. Maybe read a book or two.
Yes.
But I suppose since you're a writer, you also have to be a reader, aren't you?
Yes.
Ah, okay. So which means essentially you are not glued to your phone all the time.
Not all the time, but I can get distracted when I'm reading as well.
Do you have to drag yourself from this distraction?
Sometimes.
But do you also use it for, let's say, as a tool for writing? Because some of the people I've spoken to also are people who are my generation. Can that sound old? They use the phone as a sort of notebook, you know, when they have an idea, they just have the phone next to them and they write down ideas. Do you use it in that way also or not at all?
Yes, I use it in that way.
Okay. And where did, again, I have to ask because I asked it all my guests, where did the idea for the first book come from? Because from what I gathered, one might call it a fantasy, and you also said it yourself. It has to do with fantasy and magic and so on. Where did the idea come from for this book?
When I first watched this one movie, I forgot what specific name it was. But it just caught my eye, and I'm just like, I would really like to write something that has to do with that. But I guess I made it in my own kind of way.
And do you also enjoy, like the character in your book, Sophie, her grandmother has a bookshop, and do you also enjoy bookshops? Are you someone who goes to bookshops regularly and browse through all the books or not? Oh.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. And your writing process, I mean, given your voice, and writing young adult fiction, you're a young person. And have you, after writing 2 books by now, have you developed a, let's say, workflow for yourself, or a way how you handle writing? Meaning, do you plan? Have you planned those books, or did you go with the flow?
Yes, I do go with the flow, but also sometimes I try to plan, but right now it's just been really hard to plan anything.
Okay. Planning means, did you know your character or characters before you wrote the book? Meaning, did they live in your head for a long time before you put them on paper?
Yes.
And how long did they live in your head before you started writing down what was in your head?
I'd say about a few months.
Okay. And did you also have this particular experience where your character or characters did look over your shoulder and said, "Oh yeah, that's good. Go on. You can keep writing that." But at another time they said, "No, no, 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 no. That's not going to happen."
Definitely. Like, sometimes I'd be like, that does not fit in the story.
Okay. And was there ever a point when you wrote your books where you felt, I've written myself in a corner where you can't, you feel as if you can't get out of it and you have to leave it for a while and come back to it later?
Oh my gosh, yes. I get the most stressed when I'm writing. So sometimes I have to leave it alone or I'll stress myself out.
It's never good to get yourself stressed out, especially, I suppose, also when you do the editing. Do you have professional help editing? Do you do it on your own, or?
I go back and I edit things, but I feel like it's not that good in my editing skills because I feel like I missed a lot in my book, but as an indie author, I think that's going to be one of your main issues.
And even though you are a fairly young author, have you attended some sort of workshops, either in person or online?
No, I have not.
And would you like to?
Yes, definitely.
And do you think you would prefer, again, something that happens in person, or would you also do, or would you prefer being such a workshop online format?
Both.
Okay. And what about marketing? I mean, that's the tough question, I suppose. Because as an indie author, you have to do a lot of the marketing, if not all the marketing, on your own. What have you done so far, and how did you manage it being such a young person?
I've been using TikTok as my main strategy, and there's been a lot of people who have been interested in reading my book, and I think TikTok is a really good strategy to use, but at the same time, it's not as big as a platform to use for marketing books, just in my opinion.
And what about the feedback? Did you get feedback also on TikTok or somewhere else?
I haven't got any feedback yet, sadly.
On neither platform?
No. I'm not sure if anybody really bought it. I know one girl bought it, and then I did a giveaway to 2 girls, but I haven't got any, like, reviews back or anything.
Interesting. Sorry to hear that. But maybe now, no time like the present, or rather the 15th of April. Interesting. And how would you, as a teenager yourself, describe how hard is it to find your path in life? Because that's what your books are also about, aren't they? To find your way, to find out who you are and where you fit in. How hard is it for us oldies to understand?
I feel like it's really hard because there's like a lot of expectations on what you should be and what you shouldn't, so it's like kind of hard to find your place in life.
How does one even manage these days? I sometimes wonder. What are the most, for someone like yourself, what are the hardest part, or which causes you the most worries these days?
I think finding the right friends caused me the most worry because you never know who to trust, or you never know who doesn't like you behind your back and everything. So
do you think it's also that hard or even harder because of this whole, social media thing?
Yeah, I think phones have made it really hard for teenagers to connect in real life. Like, you can't have any social skills in real life because you're so glued to the phone.
I suppose COVID wasn't a huge help either to develop more social skills. If you had to stay at home or be taught at home, homeschooling and so on, if you can't go to school. Yeah. And how can one, for someone who isn't from the United States and hasn't grown up in this sort of school environment, how would you describe that to a teenager, let's say, from Europe, who has never experienced being a teenager in the United States and going to high school?
I feel like in the United States, it would be like a lot of judgment coming from someone who isn't born here. I feel like people here would be less accepting.
Interesting. And is it really the case that there is a lot of, or at least that's the impression we get over here in Europe when we watch, films that center around high school, that there is this whole group building in high school? Or is that completely overblown in the films?
No, it's pretty much the same.
Is it also the thing that makes it so hard for teenagers to find their way or find their path and navigate through the teenage years? I mean, being a teenager isn't easy anywhere, but
Yeah, I think everywhere it's like pretty hard to be a teenager, like no matter where you're from.
it seems to me there's a lot more change of people and possible friendships in the United States due to your different system at school.
Yes.
And writing your books, be that your fantasy book or your diary, looking back upon it, what was the greatest challenge for you?
I think the greatest challenge for me was actually believing in myself that I can actually write and people will like my books, because I still doubt myself a lot, but I mean, it's worth a shot.
Oh, yes, it is. Because, looking back and haven't done it mm, 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 it might be your biggest regret, which you don't have now because you did it. I would say good for you that you did it. And I do hope you keep on writing, don't you?
Yes, I really hope I do.
Time is an issue, I suppose?
Yes, like with school and writing, it's pretty hard.
Oh, yeah, tell me about it. Tell the adults about it. They struggle with the same things. I had a guest only recently who said his only regret is that he hasn't started earlier with his writing. He was in his 50s when he started writing, and he should have done it earlier, but your day job and so on. So the struggles are similar. Not the same, but similar.
Definitely similar.
And speaking about your writing process, have you, or did you feel that you have evolved by now from book 1 to book 2? Have you changed things in your process? Or
Yeah, because when I first started with my first book, I didn't do any editing, which was so horrible. I mean, like, I changed the capitalization and everything, but I didn't get like the commas and everything and the periods right. And it was kind of bad writing from there, but I think I did a little better with book 2.
And is there anyone out there you would say is your role model as a writer?
Yes, that would be Jenny Han. I love her writing so much.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose she also writes young adult fiction?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of young adult fiction and genre, you've written in 2 different genres. Would you like to explore more different genres, or do you think you have found your niche?
I think I would like to explore a little bit before I just decide.
Mm-hmm. And that, of course, begs the question, what is going to be next on your writing plan?
I'm really hoping to write a mystery book.
By mystery, do you mean, again, more fantasy-like, or really mystery, crime fiction-like?
Crime fiction.
Ooh. With a teenage detective and something sinister going on?
Yes, correct.
Oh.
That was like spot on.
And how horrible is it going to be then?
I would say pretty bad.
Okay. Lots of blood and gore, or no?
Yeah.
Or more cozy, you can do whatever you like in crime fiction and mystery. Be it the nice, funny, cozy one, or the gory, bloody ones, whichever you prefer.
I'm thinking about between those lines.
Okay.
I haven't decided yet.
Okay, I see. And is it going to take place again in the United States?
I think I might do it in Paris.
Oh, why Paris?
I feel like it gives that suspenseful vibe.
Paris. Have you been to Paris?
No, unfortunately.
No. Because, yeah, okay. Well, it could be. True. Well, but that's true for most of European cities, I suppose. The sinister part. When there is a lot of fog and it's cold in the autumn, they have this tendency, those old cities. Rodney, so speaking from a 2-book author by now, do you have any advice for any other teenage aspiring author out there?
I say just go for what you want to do and don't let fear or anxiety and doubt hold you back from accomplishing your goals.
Sound advice, I'd say. And would it be also sound advice to say that it might be good to put away your mobile devices for a while and sit down and read a little bit?
Yes, because that's where you can get your most inspiration from. And go outside a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely true. So as a writer, you also have to be a reader then?
Yes. I'd say to get what you want your writing style to be and where you get your inspiration from.
How did you find your writing style? Or haven't you yet?
I'm not sure if I 100% found it, but just by reading Jenny Han's books, I was like, I really want to write like her.
Mm-hmm. And what do you prefer? Because the diary is, of course, first person. Is that something that appeals to you, or would appeal to you also in a different book? Or rather, third person narration?
I'm not exactly sure.
I'm just asking because some authors find it rather difficult to maintain this first person narration, because being a first person narrator is insofar more difficult because you can't know about everything. You can't be omniscient. Whereas as a third person narration, you can give more insight for the reader, don't you? Especially in a mystery. But on the other hand, first person also makes it interesting because you only know what your protagonist knows. So,
I think third person has been really hard for me, like if I try to write in it. So I write in first person.
Okay. Interesting. It's also an interesting perspective, also for the reader. Like I said, you're always in the protagonist's head, on his shoulder. You see what he sees, you hear what he hears. That's also, for some, a challenge. Hard to tackle. Well, good for you. And Rodney, is there anything else you would like our listeners to know?
I don't really think so.
Whatever you like. Just whatever you can share, feel free to do so. No. So, we have Dreams Academy and we have Dear Dumb Diary of a Teenage Girl. So, Gen Z or C and fantasy. There is absolutely something for our listeners to look into for themselves, for their nieces, nephews, children, grandchildren, and so on. Don't look any further, dear listeners. Whatever you are looking for your nieces, nephews, children, grandchildren, for the next, let's say, birthday, the Easter Bunny will have delivered their goods when this episode is online, but next Christmas is coming for sure. Don't look any further. It's all here. You can find them on Amazon, be that as a Kindle. Do they exist as a Kindle or just?
Yes, and a paperback.
So paperback and Kindle books of Dreams Academy and Dear Dumb Diary. Splendid. Wonderful. Rodney, anything else you want our listeners to know about you, about your books?
I'd say about my second book, I think it would be really good for teenage girls and even younger girls who's entering teenage life because it can be really hard. So I think it would be really good for your daughter, niece, Yeah,
I absolutely agree. And you heard it from the author herself, dear listeners. Heed the advice, buy the book. You should absolutely do so. Rodney, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
You did enjoy this episode as much as we did? Then hit subscribe and don't miss the next episode. Also, make sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. If you like to support us and buy us a coffee, you can do so via Buy Me a Coffee and other platforms. You can find all the necessary links in the description. Until next time.